This is what it looks like in the front with my journal inside, and then you can take the journal out and remove it. I just wanted to show a close-up of the bag that I'm going to show you how to make. So here's the beautiful graph of the cross on the top, and it has a button and a journal can fit inside. Here's the journal that I included with this one. It has a pen attached to it. When you carry it, it's heavy, so I made buttons on the back. So on the back, you can take and unbutton both sides. And then it opens up, and here's the one book flap cover. The book is in the center. And then here's the other book flap. Here is the bottom, what it looks like. And this is the flap that I made on the front with the graph of the cross, so that you could fit a journal on the inside as well. For this project, I used 2 of the glitter. I love this cotton yarn. One skein of the turquoise and 1 skein of the plain white. So a total of 4 skeins of I Love This Cotton yarn to make this bag. This is how much yarn I have left over of the 4 skeins. If you're making yours just like mine, you're going to need a button. I also used 2 other buttons to hold the 2 ends of the case together. For this video tutorial, I'm going to be showing you how to crochet this cross. This is the chart if you wanted to make your own chart. I made this one in Stitch Fiddle. It has 20 columns and 30 rows. And if you don't have access to Stitch Fiddle, then you can make your own. You can pause this video tutorial and make your own graph. For this crochet project, you're going to need your 5mm crochet hook, as well as a tapestry needle and a pair of scissors. I made my graph so that I am using 20 stitches. For the stitch that I'm using, it's called the Trinity stitch. So to get the amount of Trinity stitches that you want, you need to have multiples of 2, and then you add 2 to whatever number you get. So I want 20 Trinity stitches, so I would make a chain of 40 plus 2 would be 42. So I would start with a chain of 42. I just wanted to show you a measurement. My Trinity stitches, 20 Trinity stitches, measures 10 inches across, so 10 inches in width, and for 1 Trinity stitch is approximately ½ an inch. So for 1 Trinity stitch, it's approximately ½ an inch for if you're measuring your own to fit. Take whatever color yarn that you want to start with. I'm using my sparkle white colored yarn. I'm just going to fold it over on itself to form a loop. Take your crochet hook, go right through the loop, hold the base of the loop with your middle finger and thumb, yarn over, turn the hook upside down and go through that loop for a slip knot. Then just cinch the yarn around your crochet hook. Then you're going to make a chain for whatever length that you want for your Trinity stitches. Again, for mine, I'm making a chain of 42. I'm just going to show you 4 of them. Yarn over, turn the hook upside down and go through the loop for 1, 2, 3, 4. If you're making yours exactly like mine, go ahead and finish a chain of 42. This is what my work looks like after making a chain of 42. Then you're just going to take your crochet hook, you're going to go into the second chain from the hook, bring up a loop, make a single crochet. Then you're going to go into the same stitch, bring up a loop, 2 loops on the hook, go into the next stitch over, bring up a loop, 3 loops on the hook, go into the next stitch over, bring up a loop, 4 loops on the hook, yarn over, turn the hook upside down, and then go through all 4 loops. Then you're going to chain 1. And I completed my first trinity stitch, so that counts as 1. Then you're going to go into the stitch where you finished your first trinity stitch. So go into that stitch, bring up a loop, 2 loops on the hook, go into the next stitch over, bring up a loop, 3 loops on the hook, next stitch over, bring up a loop, 4 loops on the hook, yarn over, turn the hook upside down and go through all 4. Then you're going to chain 1. And I just completed my second trinity stitch. So here's 1, here's 2. I'm going to make one more with you. So I'm going to go into the stitch where I just finished my last trinity stitch. And then don't forget your chain 1. So go ahead, finish making your trinity stitches all the way across to the end, and then come back. This is what my work looks like so far. I'm going to count the trinity stitches with you. The count's going to be very important. So here you can see is my first trinity stitch. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. So I have 19 trinity stitches so far, and I have 2 stitches left. So I'm going to make the 20th stitch with you. If you don't end up with 20, then you've done something wrong. So you just need to go back and correct your count, because you want to make sure you have the correct count to match your chart. Otherwise, it won't come out right. So now on this last stitch, you're not going to chain 1. You're going to make, after you finish bringing the yarn through all 4 loops, you're going to make a single crochet into the end stitch. So you go into that end stitch, bring up a loop, 2 loops on the hook, yarn over, turn the hook upside down and go through both for a single crochet. Then you're going to go ahead and finish off. Yarn over and pull enough yarn through to bury into your work. We're always going to be working from right to left with this stitch, and you're always going to have 20 stitches that will correspond to the graph. So we finished the first row, and you can see how I have 20 here. Now I like to work from right to left, so I'm going to renumber my graph, stitch fiddle numbered from left to right. So I'm going to renumber my chart going from 1 to 20 from right to left, since I'm working every row from right to left. Also, stitch fiddle likes to number from the larger number. It goes from top down. I like to work from the bottom up. So I'm going to renumber the rows as well. So you can see how I renumbered my graph. Now we're on the second row, and when I get to trinity stitch number 10, I'm going to be changing colors to my turquoise color. Now you're just going to take your crochet hook, you're going back to the beginning. You're going to go with your crochet hook into the first stitch, which is going to be right before your first trinity stitch. So here's your trinity stitch, 1, 2, 3. Here's the chain 1 at the top, So I'm going into that stitch right before the first trinity stitch. I'm going to grab my yarn. I'm going to hook it and bring it through. Then I'm going to chain 1. You could set your work down and then tie a knot. Then you're going to go into the same stitch with your crochet hook. You're going to go behind your loose yarn end. You're going to bring up a loop. And then you're going to make a single crochet. So you just yarn over, turn the hook upside down and go through both for a single crochet. Then you're going to go into the same stitch, bring up a loop. I have 2 loops on the hook. Then you're going to go into the chain 1 space of the previous row's trinity stitch, bring up a loop. I have 3 loops on the hook. Now your 4th loop should always be in the next stitch after the chain 1 space above the previous row's trinity stitch. So your 4th loop is always going to be in the stitch after. And that's important so that your trinity stitches will line up directly over each other. Then you're going to yarn over and go through all 4 loops and then make your chain 1. And you finished your first trinity stitch. And you can see how your trinity stitches are directly over each other, which is exactly what you want. So it's going to follow your graph exactly. Then you're going to go into that stitch where you just finished your last trinity stitch, bring up a loop. Next stitch, which is the chain 1 space of the previous row's trinity stitch, which is exactly what you want. And then the fourth loop will be in the stitch after the previous row's trinity stitch. Then you're going to yarn over and go through all 4. And don't forget your chain 1. And you're just going to repeat this until you get to stitch 10. So trinity stitch 10 is where I'm going to show you how to change colors. So I made 2. So go ahead and keep making your trinity stitches until you get to the 10th one and then come back. Don't make the 10th stitch because the 10th stitch is going to be turquoise. I just finished my 9th trinity stitch. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I just finished it with a chain 1. So go ahead and make your chain 1 if you didn't already do that to complete your 9th trinity stitch. Now you're going to loop your new color. After you loop the color through, go ahead and set your work down and tie a knot. You want to grab your loose yarn ends as well as the white yarn because you're going to carry the white yarn as you work. So the blue loose yarn end and the white yarn, and you're going to be crocheting with the new color. So you just take your crochet hook, go into that last stitch that you made your last trinity stitch into, bring up a loop, go behind the white and turquoise yarn, bring up a loop, 2 loops on the hook, and you're going to make your trinity stitch the same way. So the 3rd loop is in the chain 1 space of the previous row's trinity stitch, and my 4th loop is in the stitch after the trinity stitch on the previous row. Then I'm going to yarn over and go through all 4 loops and then chain 1. So according to the graph, I need 2 of the blue colors, so I'm going to make 1 more. Then I'm going to go ahead and tie a knot. I'm going to cut my color yarn. I'm not going to carry it and I'm not going to drop it. I'm just going to finish it off. So I'm going to go ahead and tie a knot. And I just found it easier to do it this way. Then you can pick up the white yarn, and I'm continuing to carry any loose yarn ends and burying them. Actually, I'm not going to bury the loose yarn ends. I'm going to let them hang in the back because you don't want the turquoise showing through on the white section of your chart or your project. Then you can just take and go with the white yarn, go into that last stitch that you made your last trinity stitch with, and then just make your trinity stitch. And you're still following after the chain 1 stitch of the previous row's trinity stitch with your 4th loop, and then you're just going to complete your trinity stitches back across, and you can see the gorgeous color change that you made. When you reach the end, come back, and then I'll show you how to start the next row. And this is what mine looks like so far. Okay, so this last stitch is going to be a little bit tricky. So you can see that all of my stitches have lined up over the previous rows. So here is my first one. First trinity stitches, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. So I want 1 more trinity stitch to line up here. So I have 2 stitches, the one where I finished my last trinity stitch and the last stitch here. So what I'm going to do is you're going to need to go in between where you made your single crochet on the end there. So you're going to go into that last stitch to bring up your 2nd, and then the 3rd, and then go in between that last stitch there to bring up a 4th loop. And then just yarn over and go through all 4. Then you're going to make a single crochet into that same last stitch. Then you can go ahead and finish off, just yarn over and then pull enough yarn through to bury into your work. And then that's how my work looks on the end so far. Now you're going to go back to the beginning and join just like you did before into that first stitch. And it's going to be the stitch right before the chain 1 space of your first trinity stitch. And I'm still using my white yarn. Go ahead and chain 1 and then just tie a knot. Then you're going to take your loose yarn end, we're going to bury it as we work. Any chance you can get to bury your loose yarn ends, you want to do it. Then you're going to make a single crochet in the stitch right before the first trinity stitch. Go behind your loose yarn end, bring up a loop, make a single crochet, then you're going to go into the same stitch, bring up a loop, go into the next stitch, which would be the chain 1 space of the previous row's trinity stitch. Next stitch is the stitch after the chain 1 space of the previous row's trinity stitch. Yarn over, go through all 4 loops, and then chain 1. You can see how the trinity stitches line up perfectly. So then you're going to look at your graph, and now we are on the 3rd row. So you're going to look across, and I'm going to do a color change on 9, 10, 11, and 12. So after you finish your 8th trinity stitch, come back and I'll change colors with you again. This is how my work looks so far. You can see how all of my trinity stitches are lining up directly over each other, just like the square blocks on the graph. Then I just finished my 8th trinity stitch for the 3rd row. I finished my chain 1. Now I'm going to take my new color. I'm going to loop it and bring it through. And then I'm going to go ahead and tie a knot on the back. Then I'm going to carry the blue yarn and the white yarn as I work. So I'm going to go into that last stitch where I finished my last trinity stitch, go behind the loose yarn end and the white yarn, bring up a loop, go into the next stitch, which should be the chain 1 space of the previous row's trinity stitch, bring up a loop, go into the next stitch, and you want to go into the stitch that is right before the chain 1 space of the next trinity stitch, and then bring up a loop. Then you're going to yarn over and go through all 4 and chain 1, and I'm going to need, according to the graph, I'm going to need 4 stitches of the blue color. So I'm going to go into the stitch right before the next trinity stitch, bring up a loop, go into the trinity stitch of the next stitch, the chain 1 space, of the next stitch of the previous row's trinity stitch, and then the 4th loop will be in the stitch after that chain 1 stitch of the previous row's trinity stitch. You can see how it's lining up. So here I have my blue now, blue here, and there should be a blue one right above there. Then I finished the 4 stitches as shown on the graph. So my next one is going to be the white colored yarn. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to cut the previous colored yarn, the blue yarn. Make sure you leave enough loose yarn end for burying into your work. And then I like to tie a knot because it just makes it more secure. And I like doing making crochet projects that are quality, that won't fall apart. This will help make sure that it's sturdy and won't come undone. Then you're just going to leave the blue loose yarn end. And I'm not going to carry on with this other loose yarn end. I'm going to go ahead and just cut it because it's short enough and I've buried it enough where it's buried really well. Then I'm going to go ahead and pick up my white yarn and I'm going to continue on to the end, crocheting with the white yarn and completing my Trinity stitches all the way across to the end. Go ahead and come back when you reach the end and I'll finish this row with you and then start another row with you. I'm just going to show you how it looks so far. You can see how each Trinity stitch is lining up above the previous row, which is exactly what you want. So it follows the chart. Crochet in that last stitch. And that's how it would work your last Trinity stitch on the end. Then you can go ahead and finish off. Just yarn over and pull enough yarn through to bury into your work. And you can see how it continues with a straight edge on the end, which is what you want. And then this is how my work looks so far. Then you're going to go back across to the beginning, just like we did for the third row. You're going to join in the stitch right before the Trinity stitch, or chain one space of the previous row's Trinity stitch. Then just chain one. Go ahead and tie a knot. Then you're going to make a single crochet into the same stitch. And remember that it's the stitch right before the chain one space of the previous row's Trinity stitch. Then you're going to go into the same space behind the loose yarn end, bring up a loop. Then you're going to go into the next stitch. And then the fourth stitch, which is right after the stitch of the previous row's chain one space, and then chain one. You can see how this lines up your Trinity stitches right over each other. And that's how you do it. So you just continue from right to left, lining up each of your Trinity stitches and making your color changes at the corresponding boxes on your graph. And you do that until you've completed all the way up to the top, the 30th row, and then come back. This is my front portion, and I stopped after the 27th row. Now I'm making the back that will cover the loose yarn ends on the back. So I'm going to make a back panel. The back panel is made the exact same way as the front panel, except you won't have the color changes for the cross. Again, I have the 20 Trinity stitches, so 20 columns of Trinity stitches. And then I'm going to make 27 rows, just like I made for the front of the block. I'm going to work the last stitch with you again because you want to make sure that you have the last row looking neat and where you can see all of the stitches. And after I make that last stitch with you, I'm going to turn the work with you, show you how to turn your work, because when you're making the back panel, you're not going to finish off and start again from right to left. You're just going to turn and then crochet, so it's much quicker. So here I'm working my last stitch on the end. You're going to go into the last stitch that you had your Trinity stitch, and then I have 2 stitches remaining. I'm going to bring up a loop, have 2 loops on the hook, go into the next stitch, bring up a loop, and then go into that last stitch. A little tricky getting into that last stitch sometimes. There we go. And then bring up your last loop, and then yarn over and go through all 4. And then instead of chaining 1, you're going to go back into that last stitch, bring up a loop, and then make your single crochet. Then you can chain 1 and turn your work. Then you're ready to go back across. Here is your first Trinity stitch for the row from the previous row. And you can see your chain 1 stitch from the previous row's Trinity stitch. You're going to go into the stitch right before that chain 1 stitch of the previous row's Trinity stitch and make a single crochet. Then you can go into the same stitch, bring up a loop, go into the next stitch, bring up a loop, go into the next stitch, which is the 4th stitch. It's right after the stitch, right after the previous row's chain 1 stitch. Make your Trinity stitch, and then you just continue making Trinity stitches all the way across. And when you get to the end, come back and I'll make the last Trinity stitch with you again and then turn the work with you. And then this is how your work will look when you're done. You'll have a straight edge on the end. You'll have your 20 Trinity stitches across, and then a straight edge on the opposite end to make a square block. The other difference that I did is with the cross, I used the white glittery yarn or metallic sheen yarn, and then for the back panel I just used a plain I Love This Cotton white yarn. Now I've reached the end again, and sometimes it's hard to see that I have 2 stitches left, but one way that you can tell is that you'll see each of the Trinity stitches are lining up. They should be all lining up with the previous row. So you can see how they're all lining up, and then you're coming to the end, and then you see that you need 1 more to finish up the end. So then you're going to go into that last stitch where you finished your last Trinity stitch, bring up a loop, go into the next stitch and bring up a loop, and then you're going into that last stitch on the end. And again, sometimes it's a little difficult getting into that last stitch. There we go. Bring up a loop, yarn over, go through all 4, and then remember on the end stitch you're going to go back into that last stitch, bring up a loop, make a single crochet, and then you're ready to turn. And you can see how your stitch will line up on the end. That's exactly how you want to make the side panel, so that you have a straight edge at the end and also in the beginning. So then go ahead and chain 1, turn your work, and then you're ready to begin the next row. So again, you're going to look for the previous row's Trinity stitch, and there's the chain 1 stitch right above it. You're going to go in the stitch right before that chain 1 stitch, make your single crochet, then go into that same stitch, bring up a loop, go into the next stitch, which is the chain 1 space of the previous row's Trinity stitch, and then the 4th loop will always be that next stitch. Then yarn over and go through all 4 and bring up a little bit on your loop so you have a little bit of a gap beneath your crochet hook, because you don't want the chain 1 space stitch to be too tight. So bring it up just a little, yarn over and go through that loop for your chain 1, and then just continue across. And that's how easy it is. So go ahead, finish this block, and then once you finish your 27 rows, come back, and then I'll show you what to do next. I finished the back panel, and you can see that it matches the front panel as far as size. After you finish your last stitch, you can leave your crochet hook and just take the front panel to line it up. So make sure that you have the wrong sides together before joining. For mine, I'm going to work across the top first. So I have the wrong sides together. The right side is facing up towards me, and then I have the right side facing down on the other side. Then I'm going to join the corner of the front panel. So I'm going to get under that first stitch. Then I'm going to loop, yarn over and bring up a loop. Then I can chain 1, turn my work. You can see I have the front facing me now. Then I'm going to go ahead and go into the next stitch over on the front panel, and then go through to the back panel, the top stitch of the back panel. You're going to bring up a loop, yarn over, turn the hook upside down, and go through both for a single crochet. And then you're just going to make 1 single crochet in every stitch across the top, joining the top of the 2 blocks together. And when you get to the end of the top, come back and I'll show you how to turn and work down the side. This is what mine looks like across the top. Then I'm going to turn the corner, and when you turn the corner, you're going to want to put a couple of stitches into the corner stitch. That helps the corner lay flat. So I put 2 stitches into that corner stitch. Then I'm going to go into the next stitch over, and I'm going to place 2 stitches, 2 single crochets into that stitch as well. Then you can go back to just making 1 single crochet in every stitch down the side until you get to the next corner, and then you're going to repeat all the way around back to the beginning and then come back. For the loose yarn ends, I just fold the loose yarn ends towards the inside as I crochet. So the loose yarn ends are on the middle portion of the 2 blocks. After you're back to the beginning and you finish your last stitch, you're just going to make a slip stitch into the first single crochet that you made. Just yarn over and pull the yarn through both loops on the hook. Then go ahead and finish off. Just yarn over and pull enough yarn through to bury into your work. This is how my block looks. So you can see the neat edges, and then the back covers all of the loose yarn ends. So the only loose yarn end that you have is the one that you just finished with. So you just take your tapestry needle, put it onto that loose yarn end, and then just weave it through towards the center and then out the back to bury it into your work, and then you can just cut the loose yarn end. Then you're finished with your block at this point. For the main book cover, I made a total of 62 Trinity stitches for the length that I wanted for my book cover. So that means that in order for me to get 62 Trinity stitches, I had to multiply times 2, which would give me 124, and then add 2. So I started with a chain of 126 to get 62 Trinity stitches. I made 32 rows, and I started with my glitter yarn for one row. So the glittery metallic sheen white yarn, I used one row. Then I switched to the main cotton yarn for 10 rows, and then back to the glittery yarn for 10 rows, and then the main white yarn for 10 rows, and then the last row I used my glittery yarn. So I had a total of 32 rows. Then I took and folded in each of the sides so that I had 12 Trinity stitches showing on one side, and then the equal number of 12 on the opposite side. Then I just took my main colored yarn, the white colored yarn without the metallic sheen, and just put a little bit onto my tapestry needle, because I'm going to double check and make sure you have 12. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and then just take the top stitch of that flap and the front of the cover, or actually I should say back, and then just tie a knot just to hold it in place, because we're going to put a crochet shell border. So then you're going to do the same thing here, here, and here to hold it in place as you crochet. After you finish tying down each of those corners, then you can take and flip your work over so that the right side is facing up. Then you're going to start in the top right corner. You're going to take whatever color yarn you want for your shells. I'm using this turquoise color, the same as the cross. And then you take your crochet hook, go into that corner, grab both the fold on the inside and the outside stitch. Then you're going to take your yarn, bring up a loop, chain 1. Then you're just going to take and tie a knot. Then you're going to make a single crochet into the same stitch. Make sure you go around your loose yarn end or behind it. Then you're going to go into the next stitch over, going behind your loose yarn end, making sure you grab the stitch on the flap as well, the inside flap or fold. Bring up a loop, make a single crochet. Then you're going to make a half double crochet into the same stitch. So yarn over, go into the same stitch behind your loose yarn end, bring up a loop, yarn over, turn the hook upside down and go through all 3 for a half double crochet. Then yarn over, go into the same stitch, bring up a loop. We're going to make a double crochet, yarn over and go through 2 of the loops. Then yarn over and go through 2 of the loops to complete a double crochet. Then you're going to make a half double crochet into the same stitch, yarn over, go into the same stitch, bring up a loop, yarn over, turn the hook upside down and go through all 3 for a half double crochet. Then you're going to make a single crochet into the same stitch. Let me redo that one. Grab some of the white yarn. Then you can make a single crochet into the next stitch over, making sure that you're grabbing that back fold as you work. And then you've completed one shell. So then you're going to make one more single crochet into the next stitch. And then you're going to make your shell into the next stitch. So you're going to go into that next stitch, make a single crochet, then you're going to make a half double crochet into the same stitch, then you're going to make a half double crochet into the same stitch, then another half double crochet into the same stitch, then you're going to make a single crochet into the same stitch to complete your shell, then you're going to make a single crochet into the next stitch over, single crochet into the next stitch over, and then you're going to make your shell. So then you're going to make a single crochet into the next stitch over, and then a half double crochet, double crochet, and you're just going to repeat this pattern all the way across the top. And this is how your work is going to look. Now when you reach your first knot that you tied, you have the 2 loose yarn ends, then you can go ahead and crochet around those loose yarn ends. And again, I'm still grabbing that back fold. And at the same time as I'm making my shell, I'm burying any loose yarn ends that I come across. When you reach the end of the top portion, come back and then I'll show you how to go down the side. This is what mine looks like all the way across the top, and I reached the corner. I finished my last shell and then 1 single crochet and 2 stitches. Now I'm working down one of the sides. So I'm going to make a single crochet. Here you could see how I have a space along underneath the stitch there on the side. I'm going to make 2 single crochet into that gap on that side. Then I'm going to go into the next stitch over, and you're going to have to evenly space your shells along the side because you don't have clean stitches to work into. So I'm going to make my first shell into the gap here. You can see how there's a gap along the side. So I'm going to make my shell just like I've been making all along the top. Then I can make 1 single crochet into the next stitch, and then a single crochet into the next stitch, and then I'm going to go into the next gap to make my shell. And you're just going to repeat this all the way around back to where you started. And this is how mine looks at the corner, this corner. And you're just going to work this pattern all the way around back to the beginning and then come back. Now I'm back to where I started. I put 2 single crochet into that last corner, and now I'm going to make a slip stitch into the next stitch over. Just yarn over and pull the yarn through both loops on your hook. Then you can go ahead and finish off. Just yarn over and pull enough yarn through to bury into your work. Then just take your tapestry needle and place it onto that loose yarn end. And I have the inside of my book cover. I'm going to take and weave the loose yarn end into the wrong side. Then this is what your work looks like after you're done. You can see how I have the shell border all the way around. And then on the inside, you have the flaps for the book, the front and the back portion of the book. You can see that mine is a perfect fit. Here's the back. And then opening what it looks like on the inside of the flap. So for mine, I wanted to fit this thick journal into the pocket that goes into the front. So the cross would fit over it, and I just need a little bit more length on the sides. So I'm going to show you how to make 2 side panels. These side panels have 4 Trinity stitches. Since I need 4 Trinity stitches, that means that I have to double it. So start with 8 chains plus 2 would be 10, a chain of 10. So you just take your yarn, I'm using my glittery shimmery yarn, I'm going to fold it over on itself to form a loop. Take your crochet hook, go right through the loop, hold the base of the loop with your middle finger and thumb, yarn over, turn the hook upside down and go through the loop for your slip knot. Then you're going to make your chain of 10. I'm just going to make 4 of them with you. 1, 2, 3, 4. So I'm just going to work the first part with you. I have a chain of 10. I'm going to take my crochet hook and go into the second chain from the hook, bring up a loop, make my single crochet, go into the same stitch, bring up a loop, and then make my first Trinity stitch. Then I'm going to make my second Trinity stitch. So this is the same thing that we've been doing, except it's a little bit smaller. So this is my third Trinity stitch, and then I'm going to make my fourth Trinity stitch, fourth and last. And remember, for the last Trinity stitch, you're not going to chain 1. You're going to make a single crochet in that last stitch. Now you have 4 Trinity stitches. You're ready to move up to the next row. So you chain 1, turn your work, and then in the stitch right before the chain 1 space of the previous row's Trinity stitch is where you're going to make your single crochet. And then you're just going to repeat, make your next Trinity stitch, The third loop will be in the chain 1 space of the previous row's trinity stitch, and then the fourth loop will be in the next stitch over. And then you're just going to keep repeating until you get the length that you need. And when you come back, I'll show you what length I made for mine. Now in the first couple rows, it's a little bit tricky. So far I've finished 1, 2, 3. So I'm going to show you how I made my last one. So here's my second, and then my third, and then you actually have to grab that last loop at the bottom there for the fourth, and then make your single crochet in that last stitch. Then chain 1 and turn, and then repeat. For mine, I finished 24 rows. Then I'm going to go ahead and finish off. Just yarn over and pull enough yarn through to bury into your work. And you'll need 2 of these. To make the handles, I only want 2 of the trinity stitches. So that means that I need to multiply times 2 to get 4, plus 2 is 6. So a chain of 6. Take whatever color that you want for your handles, fold it over on itself, put your crochet hook through the loop, hold the base of the loop with your middle finger and thumb, yarn over, turn the hook upside down and go through the loop for your slip knot. Then you're going to start with a chain of 6. 1, 3, 6. So a chain of 6. Then you're going to go into the second chain from the hook, make your single crochet. Then you're going to go into the same stitch, bring up a loop, next stitch, bring up a loop, next stitch, bring up a loop, yarn over and go through all 4, then chain 1, go into the same stitch, bring up a loop, next stitch, bring up a loop, and last stitch, bring up a loop, yarn over and go through all 4. And remember, since this is the last stitch, you're not going to chain 1, you're just going to single crochet into that last stitch. Then you've completed 2 trinity stitches. Now we're going to move up to the next row, so chain 1, turn your work. You're going to go into the stitch right before the chain 1 space on the previous row's trinity stitch. Make your single crochet. Then you're going to go into the same stitch, bring up a loop, next stitch, bring up a loop, and the fourth stitch will be the stitch right after the chain 1 space of the previous row's trinity stitch. Then chain 1, and then this is the only tricky part, which I'm going to work with you. So you're going to go into the same stitch, bring up a loop, next stitch, bring up a loop, and then the last stitch there, bring up a loop, yarn over and go through all 4, and then you're going to make your single crochet into that last stitch. Then you've completed your second row, and you can see how your trinity stitches are lining up, which is what you want. So then you chain 1 and repeat. And you keep repeating until you get the length you want for your handles. And you're going to be making 2 of them. This is what mine looks like after finishing 25 rows. Then I'm going to go ahead and finish off, just yarn over and pull enough yarn through to sew the handle onto your bag. and you're going to need 2 of these handles. Now we're going to sew the sides to the front cross. Just take your regular colored white yarn and put it onto your tapestry needle. The cross is right side up. Take the side panel that you're using and then just lay it down. Line it up with the top portion so that the right sides are together. And then you're going to start in the top corner. Take your tapestry needle, go into that top corner, and then tie a knot. Make sure you leave enough of a loose yarn end for burying into your work. Then you're going to take and just sew the 2 edges together with your tapestry needle. You're going to sew it all the way down to the end. Then when you reach the end, you're going to pick up the bottom corner and line it up with the corner at the bottom of your strip and continue to sew the pieces together. And then you're going to do the same thing on the opposite side with the other strip. Then when you fold it down, you could see how you have an extra length on the side. And then you're going to do the same thing on the opposite side. So you're going to take your next strip and line it up on the opposite side the exact same way, and then just start sewing down and then fold up and sew the other side. Now you're ready to sew it onto the top of your book cover. So here I have the right side facing up on the book cover, and then I'm going to make sure that you have the cross so that the top portion is furthest away from you. I have the right side facing up. Then I'm going to flip it over towards me so that the wrong side is lined up here. Then you're going to line it up to where you are at the stitch below. So here you can see I have 1 row. Here I'm going to a stitch below and a stitch up. And that's where I'm going to sew the piece together. So you can take this off of the book now if you want. And I am only going to sew it to the back flap. So I'm not going to sew it to the inner fold. So only on the one side, the front of the book cover. So then you can take and go through one of the loops into the cross side panel. Bring your work through. Make sure that you leave enough of a loose yarn end to tie a knot. And then you're just going to sew it. Make sure that you keep it lined up. So remember, I'm on this 1 row up. And I'm only sewing to 1 panel. So an easy way to do that is to just go in and out with your tapestry needle like this. And then just sew it across. making sure that you keep it straight. And then just sew it all the way down. So now I've sewed it all the way across. Then I can take, and you see how it's sewing a nice straight edge along the right side. So I'm going to bring it back down, and then I'm going to turn it. You can lay it back the right side up and then fold it down to get it lined up. And then you could see where the corner is the row that you want to line it up with. So I'm going to line up the row so that I have the right sides facing together and lined up with that row that I'm sewing along. So the right sides are together, the wrong side is facing me, and I'm going to follow along that row with my tapestry needle. Making sure I have the row lined up. And then once I have the row lined up, then I can just continue sewing across and making sure that I'm not sewing edges together. I'm just sewing this panel onto the one panel. I don't want to sew the book sheets together. And then continue sewing it all the way across. Now I've reached the end. I just want to show you what it looks like so far. So far, you can see how I have the one side sewn here. Here's the bottom of the cross. Here's the end of the book cover. And then I sewed the one side to the top portion. This is where the side of the book goes, right here. Then I'm coming to the last side that I need to sew, and I need to have this turned down because I need to bring it across so that the right sides are together as I sew. And then I'll be able to flip it back when I'm done. So I'm sewing it up the other side of the front. And then I have my long end that I left for sewing. Then I just take my tapestry needle and finish sewing the last edge. And I'm making sure that I'm lined up with that bottom row, and I'm not sewing the book flap. I'm just sewing it to the top portion. And I'm following that bottom row. So make sure that you have it lined up as you're sewing, and then finish sewing it up the opposite side. So you can see how I'm going in and out, just following that row, and then sewing the edge, the last side of the edge. Then you can take and just bury any of your loose yarn ends. Just weave it through the inside so that nobody can see them. Then I put it back onto my book, and this is what it looks like so far. I'm going to place a button at the top to keep the flap closed. So I'm going to line it up so it's centered, and then I'm going to show you how to make the loop, button loop. I centered my button, and then here's the pouch. So this is the front, and then centered, and then I'm not going to sew it to the book flap, just to the front. So I'm going to come from the wrong side up with my tapestry needle. And then I'm just going to sew the button in place. And I'm making sure that I'm only going through the front flap. Whoop. Make sure you don't get into that back flap. Then you can tie a knot and finish sewing the button in place. Then after I have the button sewn in place, you can see how I only folded it to the front and not to the bookbinder portion. Then I'm going to line up that pouch so I can see where I'm going to make my button loop. So I'm going to make my button loop starting here. With this stitch. So I'm going to take and bring up a loop, then chain one and tie a knot. Then I'm going to make a chain of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then I'm going to go over to the 4th stitch and make a slip stitch. And then finish off. Just yarn over and pull enough yarn through to bury into your work. And then you have a little loop that will go around the button. Go ahead and bury your loose yarn ends. Now I'm going to go ahead and place my journal inside and close up the loop around the button. And this is what mine looks like so far. Now I'm ready for the handles. Now to sew the handles on, I took the book out. Here's the front flap. And you want to sew the handles on the inside. So here's the one handle. You're going to line it up. And you want it so that the handle will be like this. So you want the handle to be in a curve shape. So that when you lay it flat, you just take and fold the two ends together like this. Then I have 3 shells in between the handles, and I'm 1 row down from the top. So 1 row down, I'm going to use that as my line. And when you sew it in place, you're going to take and make sure that you're only sewing it to the front flap only. So not the front cover, just the front binder, front page of the book, the binder. And then you just take and sew both handles in place. You want to sew it so that you form a square pattern. So you're going to go up to the top of that row and back across. That just gives extra strength to the handle. So you're forming a square. So you're sewing the handle in a square format for extra security. And I'm just going to go a couple of times. And then I'm going to tie a knot and then bury my loose yarn end. So here you can see how I sewed the opposite handle on the exact same way, and they match up perfectly. Now I'm going to place 2 buttons onto the back to help hold the 2 pieces together because the book is a little bit heavy. So you're going to take and turn it over so that the back is facing you, and I'm going to sew a button on to go about a stitch over and sew a button on to the right side, and then also sew a button onto the opposite side in the exact same place. And again, I'm not sewing the button to the inside flap. I'm only sewing it to the back of the cover only. This is what mine looks like on the back after sewing my buttons in place. Now you're going to make your button loops. So you're going to line up, make sure your handles are lined up, and then you're going to take and make your buttonhole. You're going to fold down the shells and then go through you're going to grab your white yarn and bring up a loop. Then you can go ahead and chain 1 and tie a knot. Then you're going to make a chain of 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Then you're just going to make a slip. You're going to go into the next stitch over and then make a slip stitch. Then you can go ahead and finish off, just yarn over and pull enough yarn through to bury into your work. And then you're going to make the exact same loop on the opposite side for the other button, and then just bury your loose yarn ends with your tapestry needle. This is what mine looks like after I have the buttons in place, and then also the button loops. I'm going to go ahead and remove the button loops.